Now, as a student at Princeton University, there are a few things that everyone is required to do in order to graduate. Now, essentially, Princeton is broken up into two types of majors. The first one is going to be AB, which is essentially Bachelor of the Arts, and the second one is going to be a BSc, which is essentially any degree in the School of Engineering. Now, if you're new around here, my name is Nicolas Chae, and I am a rising senior in the economics department at Princeton. With that being said, as an economics major and for the rest of the AB majors, every student is required to complete a year-long worth of junior independent work. Now, essentially, this year-long process known as a junior independent work, or as we call it, the junior paper or the JP, is essentially an opportunity for you to actualize your skills that you've learned in your classes in the real world. Now, the JP is a much more condensed version of the senior thesis in which you're writing 10 to 20 pages compared to 40 to 50 pages next year. Now, the majority of students pursuing an AB degree are going to have to write a JP. BSc students have a little bit more leniency because they have different coding projects or they have different research that they can do rather than writing a paper. And now in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down my own personal junior paper. This was a video I made a couple weeks ago before I submitted. So if you guys haven't watched that one, I highly recommend checking it out before you start this video. So I'll have that linked in the description down below. Now, the entire junior independent work process, like I said, is going to be a year-long endeavor. In the fall, you meet with all the juniors in your department, and the professors will break down the entire process through various lectures throughout the years, workshops, and a bunch of other resources to help us fulfill this junior independent work. Now, writing the paper itself was not the hardest part. Coming up with the idea, coming up with the drafts, and the prospectus, that took up the majority of the time. And keep in mind, this is not a new requirement for Princeton students. This has been around for decades. So anyone who attends Princeton goes in with the knowledge that they do have to write a paper. And in all honesty, my freshman and sophomore years, I really had no idea what I was going to write about. But after doing some brainstorming, my initial topic was actually very different from what I actually ended up writing about. As a YouTuber and a content creator, I really wanted to do some research on influencer marketing and see how different brands and advertisements were going to change with the new realms of influencers and YouTubers, TikTokers. There are so many different realms of marketing that haven't really been explored yet with the growth of influencers. So that was my initial topic. However, after meeting with my advisors and running this by him, we came to the conclusion that the breadth of this experiment was not going to be feasible for a junior paper and could definitely be an idea that I could save for my senior thesis. Now, this put me at a little bit of a setback. I was kind of unsure how to proceed. I didn't think there was anything else that I was interested in researching about until I just took a step back and realized, there are a variety of things that I'm interested in and could definitely integrate economics into. So I decided to look into the branch of fashion. Within fashion, there were so many different realms that I could have looked at. I definitely considered looking into luxury fashion brands, startup streetwear brands, culture. There were so many different avenues that I could have picked. However, I realized that the topic that could be best integrated into economics was going to be the realm of sneakers. Now, as someone who has just enjoyed sneakers in the past, I realized that there was a great opportunity for me to look at the resale values of different sneakers over the past few years, and that led me to the idea of looking at distinctive collaborations. As I mentioned in my paper, there were notable celebrities like Steph Curry, Virgil Abloh, Kanye West, collaborating with these huge sneaker brands like Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas to create a super high demand for all these sneakers but very limited supply. And that led me to the question of what exactly is driving these resale prices? Why are sneakers retailing for $200 but then being resold for $2,000 over 10 times its actual amount? After this pivot, I had a lot more clarity because there were tangible aspects that I could actually look at to find data, and in the next sections I'll talk about how I went about writing it. Now, this right here is my entire junior independent work. I know I keep calling it a thesis, but it's essentially a little mini thesis, so it's not really clickbait. However, the culmination of all of this has honestly taught me a lot, and I'm kind of glad I went through the process. It's not something I particularly would want to do again. However, like I said, I did grow as an economist and an academic. So first off, we're going to be talking about the structure of the independent work. I've mentioned it in the previous video, but there are essentially 5 sections that it is going to be broken up into. The first one is going to be an introduction. The second one is going to be a literature review. The third and the fourth are going to be your data and methodology, and finally is going to be your conclusion. The introduction is pretty self-explanatory. I talked about how companies in the sneaker industry have been pioneering in unprecedented avenues by growing their branches within fashion. With the expansion of a resale market for a new wave of streetwear sneakers, it is beneficial to analyze the appreciation or depreciation of these sneaker releases, determine whether or not collaborations with influential figures have an impact on resale value. Through my introduction, I quoted some articles that I had found valuing the sneaker resale market reached $1 billion 5 years ago and continues to grow every day. I provided the history of sneaker collaborations. In 1921, the first exhibit of a celebrity endorsement was between Chuck Taylor and Converse. In the 21st century, Michael Jordan's rise to fame led to the success of the Air Jordan brand. In 2016, Steph Curry's collaborations with Under Armour led to a 350% increase in US basketball shoe sales. So the introduction essentially lays out the outline of what exactly you're going to be touching upon. In your last few paragraphs, I also give a brief summary and an abstract so the reader knows exactly what your research is going to be about. The next section is the literature review. As an academic and when you're writing research papers, you can't just throw out your own ideas and hope that they stick. You essentially have to do your own research and ensure that there are other credible papers in your field that will provide support and bolster your evidence. Now, for the scope of the junior paper, I found 3 to 4 different articles that were relevant in the fields of marketing that also intertwined with economics. These are the articles that I pulled right here. As you can see, I definitely highlighted the important sections that I wanted to include in my paper. But before writing this paper, I had no idea how to even go about starting a literature review, so let me just break down that process for you as well. Firstly, Google Scholar is going to be your best friend, and this was a tool that our advisors introduced to us very early on because it's a search engine that allows you to find keywords in a ton of academic papers. Regardless of whatever topic you're studying, all you have to do is type in a few keywords and you're quickly going to be able to find dozens of articles that pertain to that as well. Secondly, you want to ensure that the articles you are reviewing are from a credible university. It can't really be anyone else's thesis. It can't just be an article you found online. It has to be an actual experiment with results that you can analyze. Now, in addition to that, when writing academic papers, there are a lot of components that you have to keep in mind. In addition to ensuring you have the right information and data, you also have to present it in a way that makes sense to a reader who may have no understanding of the topic at hand. Throughout this process, and especially during the literature review, there was no better tool to help me out than Grammarly. Using Grammarly to make sure there are no grammatical errors or typos in a big project like this was honestly a lifesaver. Especially when there are dozens of pages of information, it's very easy for small errors to slip by you. But Grammarly will point it out and ensure you have a clear and correct message that you're trying to convey. In addition to those free features, Grammarly Premium also stood out because it actually provided me vocabulary suggestions. When I'm doing something like a literature review where I'm analyzing so many different types of papers, I want to be able to paraphrase that information and put it into my own words. Using this feature allowed me to find alternative synonyms that made my paper sound a lot more cohesive and well thought out. Grammarly was an imperative tool throughout this process, and it's something that I use on the daily when I'm writing emails and even video scripts. It's completely free to download the browser extension, but if you head to the link in my description, you can get 20% off Grammarly Premium today. For a project of this scale, you definitely want to make sure that everything you're saying is grammatically correct, and there's no better tool than Grammarly. Now, moving over to the data and methodology section, this was a big obstacle that I had to overcome because there's no one that's really looked into this exact topic. There was really no way for me to figure out how to scrape this data on my own, but luckily I found an article that showed how to scrape all the data from StockX that wasn't publicly available. Now, I talked about the process in the previous video, and I will give a brief summary just so you guys have an understanding. But first off, you're going to scrape the data from StockX so that you have a wide number of observations so that you can analyze all the variables that we're looking for. Secondly, you're going to have to convert that API into a API reading software. The one that I used was Postman, and this actually allows you to accumulate all the data. Third, you're going to have to convert it from a CSV to a JSON file so that you can import it into Stata. And finally, you're going to import it into Stata and drop your unnecessary variables, and then you are ready to run your regression. So the independent variable in the study will be the presence of a collaboration, whether with a celebrity, athlete, or influential figure. The dependent variable will be the price change in resale value over time, as shoes can appreciate or depreciate depending on factors such as limited quantities, unique colorways, etc. So our regression model was going to be that y equals b naught plus x1 plus x2 plus x3. And honestly, that was just a pretty basic equation, but that allowed me to run my regressions. Now, if you don't know, a regression essentially just runs a bunch of equations on hundreds of data points so that you're able to find correlations between different variables over different periods of time. Now, right here, you also have to include a table of summary statistics. So our total number of variables was 92,800 observations. So that was the total number of shoes that the data were collected on. The average price that it sold for was $665. The standard deviation was $700 with a minimum of $25 and a maximum of $23,206. I don't know what shoe that was, but that's ridiculous. The average shoe size was around a size 9, and the average retail price was around $156. I also created variables to account for the exact month that the transaction took place. And finally, I created a variable for a price premium, which is essentially the resale price minus the retail price over the retail price as a percentage. And on average, people were willing to pay 285% more for a shoe that had a collaboration than one that didn't. Now, the initial regression I ran evaluated the amount on collaboration, retail price, and time. These results show that when regressing with the presence of collaboration, people on average are willing to spend $527 more to buy these shoes. Furthermore, if a shoe was a collaboration with Nike, the amount people were willing to pay exceeded $800. In hindsight, I realized this number could be a little bit inflated because the majority of my data did come from the Off-White Jordan collection, which inherently had higher resale prices. Now, in all honesty, that's probably the extent of what you guys will actually understand. Everything else was a lot more analysis about economic topics that probably aren't going to be interesting. However, what I did learn from this process is that you definitely want to take the right time to figure out your idea beforehand. You don't want to be in a position where halfway through the year you realize you have to completely pivot, and the best way to combat this is to find something that is going to be actually enjoyable for you to study. For any Princeton student that is watching this video and is about to write their junior paper, I highly recommend for you to just think really hard about what matters to you as well as what can be best integrated into your specific major. The majority of departments are pretty flexible as long as it has some sort of relevance to your major, and there are literally hundreds of different topics that people have chosen to study. I personally just chose sneakers. Other people will choose so many different things, like I can't even name them because it's crazy how specific and niche these topics can actually get. Finally, you don't want to view this opportunity as just another thing that you have to get done in order to graduate. I can't believe I'm going to say it, but it's an actually valuable process for you to learn at an early age, especially in college, how to write a thesis. That's something that most PhD students have to end up doing, and the fact that Princeton requires you to do it is one of the many reasons that people consider it a great institution. You want to actually gain practical skills from this process that will be applicable to other aspects of your life. So for me, learning how to do all this data analysis and regressions was something that I've never done before. But now that I know the process, I can easily integrate that into my YouTube metrics or my data and figure out how I'm going to be able to leverage my economics degree into my YouTube platform as well, which is going to be huge and allow me to chase so many more opportunities. I know this video has probably gone on for a while now, but I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown of how I wrote my junior independent work. It was of a process, but like I said, I learned a lot, and hopefully making these videos will help other students along the way. And if you're a Princeton student, good luck, man. Like, this sucks, but it's for sure going to be 10 times harder next year when I have to do my thesis. If anyone has any topics for me to check out for my thesis, people are definitely starting to do research over the summers, so leave it in the comments down below if you guys have any ideas you think I should be pursuing. As always, don't forget to drop a like if this video was helpful. Subscribe for other content, guys. There are so many different videos in the works right now. Finally, guys, make sure to head to the link in my description to check out Grammarly. It's honestly a lifesaver when you're writing any sort of academic paper. If you're a student, this is honestly going to be a tool that you use every single day, whether you're writing emails, drafting cover letters, resumes, and if you upgrade to Grammarly Premium, it's definitely going to be a worthwhile investment for your entire college career. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your post notifications, and let's build, baby. Peace.